Let me get situated here because I just want to. Yeah, good morning. Let me turn. I'm fine. Jason Chow. And I see Jameson Niddle, if I mispronounce it. Apologize. And then there's Brian Sackett, which looks like he's somebody in Mountain View. And then there's Lorenzo Lopez.
Right.
And I'm saying the names because I want to be sure their mics are working, so that's why I'm doing that. Okay.
Okay, yeah. You sound perfect. We can clearly hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. We've got 7 questions for you today in about half an hour. Before we begin the interview, let me introduce myself. My name is Jason Chow. I'm a senior civil engineer in the Public Works Department here in the city. Brian?
Hi, my name is Brian Sackett. I'm an architecture engineer. I'm one of 3 with the city.
And that leaves me. I'm Lorenzo Lopez. I'm the city traffic engineer.
All right, Michael, if you're ready to begin the interview, I'm ready to start.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. You know, it's 30 minutes, 7 questions, so I'm going to time it. So,
Okay, great. Question 1. Please describe how your education, training, and experience makes you a strong candidate for the plan check engineer position with the city of Mountain View.
okay, my experience is as a structural engineer. I design and review buildings. I've done probably about 21 years as a design professional, standing and sealing drawings, 6 years as a reviewer, making sure all the plans are done, make sure they're correct. So I have a very extensive knowledge of all the building materials, and I'm actually a licensed structural engineer in the state of California and 3 other states, Washington, Colorado, and Texas. I have intimate knowledge. I've been called the expert on all sorts of different, like all the engineering materials, your structural steel, your light gauge steel, pre-stressed concrete, post-tension concrete, reinforced concrete. Let's see, light gauge steel, masonry, reinforced and unreinforced, in wood. And I'm very, I have expert knowledge in all the lateral systems, cantilever columns, your shear walls, whether they be wood or masonry or steel plated, moment frames, whether they be steel or concrete, brace frames, steel or concrete, steel brace frames, and let's see, BRBFs. I've got expert knowledge in base isolation, which, some of the buildings have that, the essential buildings, and I've got a very good statics knowledge, probably I graduated at the top of my engineering class, with great distinction. And, so I've reviewed and designed all sorts of buildings, pretty much, any type. So it's high rise, low rise, and everything in between, and even some of the more complex buildings. I'll give you an example. It's not one I reviewed or designed, but it's an example of a similar type. For example, because it's in Mountain View, it's the new Google. I think it's the amphitheater. It's basically a big dome that's humongous. With all the windows and stuff that's open. So and then I've got an ICC Plans Examiner certification, and I've kept up on my current knowledge with the University of British Columbia, which I've been doing for years because that's how I learn about things like CLT shear walls, which is the new thing these days because a lot of the mass timber is a new thing. An example of that would be the Microsoft new campus is an example of a mass timber building. So, and I've been told I'm a very strict person when it comes to review, but I've also been told I'm very reasonable. When somebody asks why they're putting something on the plans, I tell them why they're doing it, And I believe that the job's prepared me because I have expert knowledge in all the materials. I'm not afraid to ask questions, and I've actually, in building departments, helped out customers, and even as a person over the counter, I've changed policies, implemented policies as well. For example, a reviewer... I came into one of the cities I was designing buildings for, and I asked the building official, I made the plan reviewer come up with better comments. The person just wrote it's wrong, so I asked, okay, please tell me where it's wrong. I'm not saying you're right or wrong. And what happened was afterwards, yes, I paid for it, but they changed their policy to be more specific, so it helps out. And the reason I asked for it is because I'm going to be coming in, designing new buildings, submitting them as a customer. I want to be able to do it right the first time and not make future work for everybody. So, and I've got a good customer mindset. That means if there's a change, something in the code, I'm not afraid to do something about it. I'm trained on Bluebeam and all the, most of the plan review systems. I adapt to those pretty quickly. So, I think that's it. So, we're 26 minutes left.
Great. I've got question 2. As the plan check engineer, one of your tasks would be to assist with the city's one-stop permits for single-family residential home addition / remodels and commercial TIs. These 30-minute one-on-one meetings may be with designers, architects, contractors, business owners, and or homeowners. Identify 3 characteristics you possess that allow you to effectively balance code requirements with a high level of customer service for these one-stop appointments.
I would have to say I have the code knowledge, and I believe that's one of the things that I have. Whether it's, I've reviewed and designed a bunch of single family homes. I've mainly reviewed most of them. So having the code knowledge is really important. Also, being able to figure it out. Like, for example, the homeowner wants to, cut a hole in the wall or something. I would be able to tell them, from an engineering perspective, this could affect your shear wall. If you have a shear wall or a frame, what to do about it. 2, my flexibility. And when I say flexibility, it's not that I'm getting people to, no, you're not complying with code. That's not what I mean. What I'm talking about is giving them ideas. For example, if they want to put windows and they need a lateral system, I would tell them, you need to put a moment frame in. Here it is, Or if you want to seal up the wall up and put a, plywood shear wall in, for example, you still have to have lateral. And then the other thing is being able to read the engineering drawings. That's really, really important because you don't want somebody to cut a hole in the wall and then it's holding up by the gravity or the lateral system. I see this happen many times. And, I have very strong engineering judgment. Fundamentals is the important thing, but also the experience of those engineering fundamentals. So I'm able to respond to them. And then the other thing, too, and this is a 4th thing I'll add, is when I don't know something I'm not afraid to get somebody to help them out. And, for example, if it's, MEP information, in the house, I only know a little bit, but I would get somebody that has the expertise in it to help them out. So part of good customer service is if you don't know what it is, you don't try to BS it. I refuse to do that. I would get somebody that would know that has more knowledge than me, because good customer service is giving them the right knowledge, not the, that works, not the, making something up as you go. Because that's not going to get a customer to come back. And we're down to 23 minutes.
Okay, great, thanks. Question 3. The city is currently or has planned the launch of new technologies to assist with online permitting, streamlining permits, and advancing the city into the 21st century. What experience do you have with online permitting programs or land management software? Please specify.
Okay, I don't have experience. Let's see. If we're talking the land management software, the closest I've got is the GIS system, looking stuff up on the GIS system, knowing where things are, property values, things like that, size of the houses, or the business, and also depending on how it's set up, it could be, one city I worked, they had all the C of Os online so people could research them. So that's my extent of the land management software that I know of, just to use it. And also Google Earth would be technically a land management software because you're able to look to see where stuff is. I don't alter the data. I just use the data. So I can only read it and what to do with it. As for the plan review systems, I'm very familiar with Bluebeam. I use that quite a bit. Laying one layer on top of the other, marking plan check comments on, and not just saying clarify ABC. That's not going to work, and it's not going to get compliance. So I'm very specific on that, and I use the plan review software to, for example, draw free body diagrams of the structure so they understand what's going on or why it's wrong and where it comes from. Other parts that I do with the software, whether it's Bluebeam or Acela, I don't know what your system is. I can't comment on it. It could be ePlans. Each system is custom, so it would take me a little time to adapt, but it doesn't mean what I'm going to do the first few times is ask how to do it right the first few times, so I get it correct, because the last thing I want is for wrong information to be entered, and then, for example, we forget to do an inspection. And that's not good, because, especially for a contractor, because it costs money and they have to tear things out. And that's no good for anybody.
Thank you.
All right, question number 4. The chief building official has directed you to conduct the plan review of a new high-profile auto body repair shop where the city manager has asked city staff to expedite review and issue the building permit by the end of the week. During the plan review, you discover the spray booth they're proposing to install is not code compliant because it is not UL listed, along with some other minor concerns you identified. Describe how you would handle this situation.
I would tell the applicant why they're not getting the spray system, and I would tell them it's not UL compliant. Other ways I can handle it is if it's other parts of it are okay, I would approve certain parts of it. The spray, spray system, that you're talking about, that could be a deferred submittal. So that I would be sure that there's enough structure, or better yet, to you could divvy it up into separate permits. It's up to the building official if that's okay or not. So what I would do is have them, get everything else approved outside of the spray system. Have them come up with details so that, for example, pre-approved so the inspector can look at it, for example. So they can, for example, leave a hole in the slab for the spray paint system. Everything that affects that. I would do that, get that part out. I would also put in the computer, there's a deferred submittal, and that would have to be, I could do it, but I would ask the building official the proper way to do it because every system is different. And then I would keep the high profile project up, and keep a lot of open communication and tell them why they're not getting it. And basically I would ask the applicant, maybe the building official may have another idea. But if it's not UL approved, it's not going to get permitted.
Okay. Question number 5. Do you feel there's a difference between enforcing the intent of the code and the letter of the code? Please explain the difference and provide an example.
Okay, let's repeat that question again. You said enforcing the code, the
Sure.
enforcing intent, and I want to get this straight.
Yeah, no problem. So question 5. Do you feel there is a difference between enforcing the intent of the code and the letter of the code? Please explain the difference and provide an example.
Okay, that to me, my answer for this is going to be it depends on the situation. Everything is not in the code. Obviously, I'll use the intent. If you're forcing the intent of the code, I'll give you an example. Having equilibrium in any structure so the building doesn't fall down, whether it be laterally or in gravity, that will be in the code. The intent of the code is, it says you have to have load paths, and sometimes you can't do it. And I'll give you an example. When I was in the CL area, I reviewed a thin shell building, which is technically not in the code. It's an old building from the 1960s, and it doesn't have any typical lateral system. So the intent of the code would be basically, that the system works. You're not going to find, in the code itself to the letter, where, you have to do it. Only the thin shell parts, not, the shell has to be so thin. It wouldn't make sense to put everything in the code, statics, for example, or, Timoshenko's thin shell structures. That wouldn't work. Your building code would be massive. And then a letter of the code, that would be, for example, it depends what it is. If they're putting design information, I would require that and tell them this is what the code says. Other things would be deferred submittals. Making sure that there's, like for concrete, the letter of the code would be like if you have to have boundary elements, you have to put those in. If it's a new building, obviously it's an existing building, you have a little bit of leeway. So, you have to prove that the structure works. When I do review or design retrofits, a lot of the stuff's not available. An example would be, that I've reviewed that wasn't per the code, and the thing I would make them do, if it's per the letter of the code, there's something that's there. They have to put it on, make sure it's there. I would tell them where it comes from, whether it's, and you have to put, by code, you have to put what documents you use, basically, to come up with the design, and also all the standards. Those, like for example, steel has to, your steel strengths, things like types and things like that. That has to be on there. That's the letter of the code. Now, another example of enforcing it would be, performance-based design. There's really no rigid code, for example. That's why they're peer-reviewed. Like for example, your over 240 feet tall high-rise building, which Mountain View doesn't have. I'm using as an example. Obviously, they would require a lateral system. moment frames on the outside with concrete shear wall cores, but, in performance-based design, you can get away from that. You have to have a peer review. So that's an example of something that's the intent of the code because it's, making sure the structure holds up. It's not in the code. And we've got, let's see, we're about halfway through.
Okay, question number 6. An architect has called you to complain about a commercial TI project you approved. Upon building inspection, the city building inspector required some major accessibility improvements to the building that were not identified at plan review. The building inspector would also not pass the structural framing, saying that the plans were missing required details and were incomplete. What step would you take to resolve the issue?
Okay, for me, if it's structural and has incomplete details, first of all, that wouldn't happen with me typically, if I were reviewing it, because I catch all this stuff. I'm very thorough, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. And there's a definition of when they say it's thoroughly detailed, because if it's an existing building, that's a little difficult to do because, especially, let's say, earlier versions of the code didn't require everything to be noted on the plans like it does now. So what I would do, on the structural side is make the engineer, come up, send a letter to the engineer, the architect, the owner, and tell them you need to come up with, the structural details. Now for the accessibility details, I would require that be noted. I would look that up, to be sure first it really needs to be done, for accessibility. And I want to be sure, the other thing you want to do is check to be sure it actually could be built. That's a problem if, for example, you have a column in the middle of a accessible path. You can't get through the building. In that case, you would have to file a form called a hardship form saying you can't do it. So first I would ask to see what that is, ask the inspector, have questions, and if it's accessibility, they would have to, come in and, the job would be stopped. And the other thing, in the code, there's a section of it basically said we can't approve, if it was the code, the plans were issued what's called an error. We have the right, the building department has the right to take the permit back. And that's a rare thing, but that's something that would have to be done. In my case, I would try to be flexible and, stop work on a certain part where the accessibility is and get that taken care of. As for the structural, obviously I would look at it, and talk with the inspector and go with him, something like that. The inspector sees things, but, they don't have, in my opinion, they don't have the engineering knowledge that I have, that's extensive. So I would ask more questions about it,
Okay,
Thank you, Lorenzo Lopez. Sorry.
you good? You
Yes.
good, Alan?
Yeah, we're 18 minutes.
That actually concludes our questions.
Wow.
Do you have any additional comments you would like to share with the board regarding why you're the best candidate for this position?
I feel I'm the best candidate because of my experience, and I'm a stickler when it comes to making sure structures are compliant. I've got experience in that because I've sat not only as a design professional submitting it, but also as a reviewer, and I've also sat in when these things go wrong. I get called up, with attorneys, trying to figure out who's responsible for all the design problems. It's a very rare thing, and what happens is, usually in those circumstances, these things seldom go to court. It's they're arbitrated, so I get to see what goes wrong, and I'll apply that knowledge and let everybody have a chance at it. I'm very approachable. I'm not afraid to ask questions. So, yes, I'm going to be strict, but if I don't know something, it doesn't mean I'm not going to ask questions about it. I've done that a few times, and I try to, I'll be strict, but if it's something I don't know or have enough information, I'm not afraid to ask that person. I tell them, you're not in trouble. I need additional information. And one thing I try to do, I get right back to them. And another thing that I do is make sure that, if I can't answer it, find somebody that does. Or ask questions. Or if I see something that looks out of the ordinary, I alert the other department and give them a chance to address it. We're only human beings. We can only see what's on the plans. And I'm not expecting everybody to be perfect. I don't. I try to, but I make mistakes, and when I do, I fix them immediately. I let the customer know sometimes. That's a very rare thing. And the other thing, too, is got the extensive design experience where I'm actually able to help people, and having the engineering knowledge helps them because, for example, if they don't know something, I'm not afraid to suggest something. But I always leave. One thing I always do is I leave it very open ended to give the applicant a chance to come up with something. Because you don't want you want the applicant personally, you want the applicant to feel like they're taking part in the discussion as well. I think it's a two-way street, and I like happy customers. I'm very efficient. Not afraid to give out my knowledge. For example, if I design something a certain way, if I have a design aid or something, I will give that out. Here it is. Do your own research, obviously, but it's a good thing to get started because you want everybody to grasp the concepts. And I don't back down when I'm right. So I think that's me. The next questions I have, I don't know if you can answer, is what's the next step after this interview today?
Okay.
Hi, Michael. Sorry, the panel can't answer any questions about the position or anything like that right now. But for the next step, you'll receive a call momentarily after this interview ends about the written exercise.
Okay, do I have to physically come down there? Or?
Nope, it's just over email and over the phone.
Over email and over the phone. Okay, how long will that take about, if you mind me asking?
Yeah, it's limited to 30 minutes.
Okay. I just want to know, is this part of this interview right now?
It's in conjunction with the interview, so it's not going to be over Zoom. So it'll start once we end here.
Okay. Do you have can you check to be sure we have the email address correct before we get off this call?
My colleague will call you, and she can confirm with you then that she has the right email address.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to check on that. I want to thank you all for your time. Jason Chu, Lorenzo Lopez, Brian Sackett, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and have a good day.
You too.
Do you want me to hop off the call?
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Yep, bye-bye. Jameson Niddle.